Okay, imagine this scenario. You're in an office, right? Maybe you're just setting up or moving desks around, and you see an open Ethernet port just sitting there on the wall. It looks kind of exposed, maybe even useful. What do you do? Seems simple, doesn't it? Like just plugging in a cable, what's the big deal? But today we're actually going to do a deep dive into something called unauthorized ports. And these, well, they aren't just empty sockets. They can be these really guarded gateways, hiding a whole maze of potential dangers and surprisingly some pretty sophisticated defenses. So our mission today is to really get under the hood of these often, overlooked connection points. We're going to look at what an unauthorized port really is. We'll unpack what happens right away if you plug into one, explore the protections organizations use, some are quite clever, and reveal some, frankly, surprising risks. We're talking everything from just accidental mix-ups to deliberate traps. The goal is that by the end of this chat, you'll have some crucial knowledge about this. Critical but maybe underestimated bit of network security. So let's get into it. Okay, so unauthorized port. Seems pretty straightforward, right?
Right.
If it's unauthorized, you just shouldn't use it. Is there more to it than just being in the wrong spot?
That's a really good place to start because, yeah, at its core, it is what it sounds like. A physical Ethernet port a user isn't allowed to access. But the why behind it, why it's unauthorized, that's where things get interesting and important. It's not always just about location.
Okay, tell me more then. What kind of reasons make a port unauthorized that we might not think of immediately?
Well, for starters, it could be connected to a really secure part of the network, somewhere you just don't have the clearance for. Think sensitive data, that kind of thing. Or maybe it's in a physically restricted zone, like a server room, and it might be configured only for very specific devices, a particular server maybe, or some specialized gear. And then, yeah, there's the really intriguing one. It could actually be a deliberate trap, something we call a honeypot.
A trap. Okay, we definitely need to circle back to that. But first, those immediate consequences you mentioned.
Yeah.
In that office scenario, if someone does plug in, maybe not realizing it's off limits, what actually happens? Do they just get an access denied pop-up? Or is it more dramatic?
Oh, it can be much more aggressive than just a polite denial, yeah. One of the main frontline defenses is called court security. It's a feature right on the network switches themselves. And it basically restricts access by remembering the MSC address, that unique hardware ID of devices that are allowed.
Right, the MAC address. So if my laptop's MC address isn't on the approved list for that specific port, what does the network do? Does it just ignore me?
No, that's when you trigger what's called a port violation. When that unauthorized MSC address shows up, port security immediately kicks in. The most common reaction. The port just shuts down, disabled, instantly. It's about immediate containment, stopping anything further right there. Plus, usually triggers alerts, logs the event so the IT team knows something just happened. The potential security incident flag goes up.
Wow, okay. That's a pretty forceful response, literally shutting it down. Is that the only way networks handle this, or are there other layers involved?
There's another really powerful gatekeeper, 802.1x authentication. Think of this one less like a reactive shutdown and more like a bouncer demanding ID before you even get close. It forces the device trying to connect to provide proper credentials, maybe a username and password, or sometimes a digital certificate before it grants any network access at all. So you plug into a port using 802.1x and you don't have those credentials, access denied. Simple as that. The connection just never fully happens. It's like, sorry, you're not on the list.
Ah, okay, that's a really clear distinction. So connecting the dots here, what do these two different reactions, the port physically shutting down versus just being denied access by 802.1x, tell us about how a network is set up? Maybe it's security philosophy. Does one have more overhead?
That's a great question. A port violation causing a shutdown signal a really aggressive, immediate containment approach. It's basically zero tolerance. The network says, nope, get out now. You see this where any unauthorized physical connection is seen as a major threat, trying to stop anything bad from happening right away. 802.1x, though, indicates a strong focus on identity. It's less about the physical act being a violation and more about ensuring only known, trusted identities get on the network in the first place, no matter the port. It's more trust, but verify with credentials. Both are strong, but they show different priorities. Immediate physical lockdown versus strict identity check at the gate.
That makes a lot of sense, those different philosophies. Okay, but let's go back to the idea that sometimes the network isn't trying to stop you, but might actually want you to plug in. You mentioned honeypots. Tell us about those.
Right, the honeypot. So essentially, it's a decoy. It's a system, or sometimes just a single port that's deliberately set up to look like a legitimate, maybe even juicy part of the network. It might have fake data, simulated services, things that look valuable, or maybe even slightly vulnerable. but its real job is to lure in potential attackers.
That sounds risky. Why would an organization actually want to attract attackers? Isn't that inviting trouble? What's the strategic play there?
It seems counterintuitive, yeah, but it's actually quite strategic. The whole point of a honeypot is to watch and learn. By giving attackers a safe playground, safe for the organization, that is, they can monitor what the attackers do, what tools do they use, what vulnerabilities are they trying, how do they move around. All this intelligence is gathered without risking the actual real network assets. So it's a controlled environment for reconnaissance. Think of it like a digital sting operation.
The digital sting. I like that. So it's a calculated risk, setting bait to learn. But is there a worry that, a really smart attacker might figure out it's a honeypot and just avoid it? Or even worse, maybe use it against the company somehow?
That's definitely a consideration. Honeypots have to be designed carefully. They're usually isolated, heavily monitored, precisely so they can't become a launch pad into the real network. The goal isn't always to fool everyone forever. It's to be realistic enough to gather useful data. And hey, if a smart attacker does detect it, even that tells you something about their sophistication.
Fascinating stuff. But okay, not all the risks come from these clever traps, right?
Right.
What about more mundane issues or maybe things an insider might do, intentionally or even accidentally?
Exactly. And that brings us to the problem of rogue devices. A rogue device is basically any unauthorized piece of network gear. Could be a small switch someone brings from home, maybe a wireless access point to get better signal, or something more malicious like a hidden network sniffer. Someone plugs it into the network without permission.
Okay, and the big risks there. What happens when someone hooks up a rogue device? Is it mainly about stealing data, or does it cause other kinds of problems too?
The risks are pretty wide-ranging, actually. Yes, data theft is one. A rogue device could capture network traffic, basically spying on everything passing by. But it can also create new, uncontrolled entry points into the network, bypassing firewalls and other security, think backdoors. Or it might just extend the network in a way IT doesn't know about or manage, creating blind spots. It's like someone adding a hidden extension to your house without telling you. It's inherently insecure.
Yeah, that's not good. Okay, what about VLAN misconfiguration? That sounds more like a technical mistake, but how does that fit in with unauthorized ports and security risks?
Right, so a VLAN, that's a virtual local area network, is basically a way to group devices together logically, even if they're plugged into different physical switches. It's used to segment the network, maybe keep the finance department's traffic separate from marketing's for security or just performance reasons. A VLAN misconfiguration can happen if a port, maybe an unauthorized one someone plugs into, is incorrectly assigned to the wrong VLAN due to an error.
So, someone plugs into what they think is a general port, but because of a mistake in the setup, they suddenly find themselves effectively inside a really sensitive network segment, like accidentally landing in the server room network.
Precisely. Their intent might be totally innocent, just needing a connection. But because of that configuration error on the port, they could suddenly have access to confidential files, critical systems, stuff they absolutely should not see or be able to reach. A really scary kind of accidental exposure.
Wow. Yeah, definitely scary. Okay, and one more type of chaos, network mayhem. What's a broadcast storm, and how does just plugging in a cable lead to that kind of problem?
A broadcast storm is basically when the network just drowns in its own noise. It gets overwhelmed with broadcast traffic messages meant for everyone on the local segment. Imagine an echo chamber where messages just keep bouncing around, multiplying, getting louder and louder until nothing else can get through. It consumes all the bandwidth, processors on switches get overloaded, and things can grind to a halt.
I think I heard a story like that once. Someone trying to be helpful, maybe looped a cable between two wall ports, brought down a whole section of the office. Is that the kind of thing?
That's a classic example. It often happens when someone accidentally creates a network loop. It could be as simple as plugging one end of a cable into an unused port and the other end into another nearby port on the same network segment, or connecting two ports on the same switch together. This creates a physical circle for broadcast traffic. A message goes out, hits the loop, comes back, gets sent out again, over and over, exponentially growing. That's your storm, and yeah, it can take down large parts of the network pretty quickly.
So if we pull all these risks together, the honeypots, the rogue devices, those accidental VLAN issues, the network crashing storms, it really hits the big three, doesn't it? Network integrity, keeping data confidential, and just keeping services running.
Absolutely. Every single one of those scenarios, whether it's a deliberate trap, a simple mistake, or someone adding unauthorized gear, directly threatens one or more of those pillars. It impacts day-to-day work, potentially exposes sensitive info, disrupts critical functions. It really shows how a simple physical action, plugging in a cable, can ripple out with some serious digital consequences.
Okay, this has been fascinating, unpacking the tech, the traps, the risks. But here's where I think it gets really crucial, because technology isn't the whole picture, right? It seems like the human element is huge here. Beyond all the smart switches and authentication protocols, how important is just user awareness, people knowing not to plug things in?
Oh, it's absolutely paramount. You can have the best technical defenses in the world, high walls, strong gates, you name it. But the human user, they often hold the master key. They can bypass layers of security, sometimes without even realizing it, sometimes intentionally. And this is exactly why things like acceptable use policies or AUPs are so important.
Right, AUPs, just to clarify for everyone, those are basically
The rules of the road for using company technology. The AUP spells out what's allowed and what's not, including how you connect to the network, use devices, access data. It sets clear boundaries. But more than just rules, a good AUP, combined with training, helps people understand why these rules exist. An informed user isn't just following orders, they become part of the defense. They're like sensors on the ground.
Makes sense. Empowering people to be part of the solution, not just telling them no. So what's the really practical, actionable advice then for anyone listening in an office or similar setting? What are the key best practices?
It boils down to two really simple but critical things. First, never ever plug anything into a network port you weren't specifically told to use or assigned to. If you're unsure, just don't do it. Assume any random open port is off limits unless you know for a fact it's okay. Ask IT if you need a connection. Second, and this is just as vital, if you see a port that looks damaged, or maybe one that's exposed in a weird place, or just something seems off about the network cabling, report it. Let your IT team know immediately. They can check it out, make sure it's secure, and fix any potential problems before they cause trouble. It's about vigilance.
So it sounds like the best strategy for any organization isn't just about the tech to fixes, but it really needs that strong educational piece. Teaching employees about these specific, seemingly simple dangers and having really clear, easy ways for them to report anything suspicious.
Precisely. You can invest heavily in cybersecurity tools, but if you don't educate your team about something as basic as plugging into an unknown port, you're potentially leaving a huge gap. A truly comprehensive security strategy has to cover both the digital defenses and the physical human element. Every single person plays a role.
Well, this has been incredibly insightful. We've really peeled back the layers today, haven't we? We started with what an unauthorized port even is, beyond the obvious. We looked at those immediate defenses like port security shutting things down and 802.1x demanding credentials. Then we dove into the deeper stuff, those clever honeypot traps.
Right, and the risks from rogue devices someone might bring in, or those accidental VLAN mix-ups.
Yeah, and even how a simple loop can cause a network crippling broadcast storm. And maybe most importantly, we kept coming back to the crucial role you, the user, play in all this. Human awareness, following those acceptable use policies, it's just as vital as any firewall. You know, in a world where we hear so much about complex cyber attacks and digital threats, this whole conversation is a great reminder. Sometimes the simplest physical action, just plugging in a cable, can unlock this whole hidden world of vulnerabilities, or maybe even lead you right into a carefully laid trap. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other simple physical actions out there might have these profound hidden digital consequences we haven't even thought about? Something to chew on until our next deep dive.